Welcome back to another episode of Up and Coming. You guys already know who I am, Da Vinci's, and I'm so excited. The reason why I said my name like that because I have my special pal Lex Juarez joining me today. How are you doing today?
Hi everyone, Lex Juarez here. I'm gonna give it a few seconds, see if anybody pops on the live feed really quick, and then I'm gonna let you guys know a little bit more about what we've got going on here on Interstate 295 southbound.
Oh, I'm doing so good. I'm so happy that I, was able to get on here with you and chit chat a little and catch up with my old pal. I don't want to say your full name now. You have this whole new, name and persona. So
it's all good. I'm still working on. Still, people call me Devin, but I'm trying to be like Charlemagne the God. Like I don't even know his real name. I just know Charlemagne. Right. That's how I'm trying to get to be.
No more Devin. Devin's
that chapter in my life is closed. We're now Da Vinci's, and I'm excited to talk to you today. Because you've known that chapter in my life, and you're still in that chapter. For guys, you don't know who she is. She is a news reporter. Lex is a news reporter. We met in Augusta. Then you literally
not lucky.
Hey. Tell us about that. Tell us, it's been like what, almost 2 years since it's been since the pandemic since we last talked.
Yeah, since you moved to Columbia. And that was just like a few months before I got my offer here in Washington. So I live in Washington, D.C. now, and I'm a local news reporter here in the district, covering mostly D.C., but I also cover some of the outside in Virginia and Maryland as well, depending on what's going on. So, that's kind of in a nutshell the gist of what I do. But like Devin said, or Da Vinci's said,
you still call me Devin.
I started in Augusta, Georgia was my first market after college, and I think me and you started just a few weeks after each other. Our first,
few months, yeah.
Working that weekend shift together at that one story, I think was when we first time we like talked to each other and saw each other out in the field.
You remember that story?
I do. It was they were releasing the
balloons
about that.
Yeah, for Preston. I can't remember his last name. The guy who was like shot and killed and pushed into. They was like then they found him later into like a shed.
Right, and but at that time that we were covering it, it was still a mystery kind of.
Yeah.
What happened to him and. We talked to his sweet kids. I remember it was.
Yeah, we talked to his family, and his kids were like toddlers then, and they like let off the. It was like sad. It was a really, and we had to cover stories like that. Like that was me and your thing. Like we cover stories like that all the time.
And I still am doing it here. And luckily I've got some bosses now who recognize when that gets really tough because how it impacts your heart and. You get sad, you come to work and you're just like, oh, please just like, let me cover something happy today. And so, luckily, I've got some really great bosses and they're, not that my bosses in Augusta weren't great because they were great too, but it's a little different when you're at a much smaller station. And so we still cover, we have to cover the sad stuff and do that here also, but they give me a chance to kind of get a break from covering doom and gloom all the time and getting to really bring some more of my personality into the shows as well as just covering stuff that people want to watch because they want to know what's going on, but you can only take so much of that before you get I'm sick watching the news kind of thing.
I haven't watched the news since I quit my job, and that was November.
Yeah, I think it's funny you say that because I feel like a lot of people who work in the news industry probably don't watch as often as the loyal viewers that we have, because it just becomes so much to be taking that in all the time.
Well, let's talk about that because not the last three, because I am a consistent one. So like the past two, reporters I talked to, Ashley Flette, you know her, my former colleague. And then I talked to another guy, Cole. I can't think of his last name right now, but he's actually a content creator over here in Ritual Motion. He does esports, League of Legends. And all three of us have talked about the bad breakup that we had with the news, but we really didn't touch up on like everything. You're still in the game. I think almost 5 years in now. what's the game like for just a person, not just a person, but just being a woman? Because technically you will be a minority in the industry.
Right. Yeah, and like it's 5 years full time, but even I think, this whole like hustle and grind and that mindset and the way you really have to kind of get into it and submerge yourself in that news kind of culture started when I was in college, right? When I got my first internship, and then from there, just taking off. And if I'm going to count all of that, that's going to be 7, almost 8 years that I've been really just like news, 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 news. I think especially for people who right when they get out of college and their first job, you want so badly to be good and to really to really know the place that you're living in and the community you're serving, that even we're working for what, like I was making $12 an hour and 2 cents.
I was making 14 something. Like people at Starbucks was making more money than us.
Right. They're talking about raising the minimum wage at McDonald's to $15 an hour in Georgia when we were there. And I was like, well, dang, like I might need to go get a part-time job at McDonald's. That'll make more money than my job in reporting by $3 an hour. And people think it's very glamorous, but we can talk about that later. But as far as, we're making little to no money and working, not really allowed overtime, but then we're going home and we're studying essentially. We're reading up on the stations, and we're scouring social media and calling people to set up interviews because you want to be, the best and to really hone your craft. And I think that part of that and wanting to really know the community and be that trusted source, especially when you first start and you have no idea how to have a work-life balance with that, because you are constantly taking in news or doing something for work in some way. And I know like a lot of us get burnt out, right? And I think that's why. And it's not really something that gets, I don't know that it gets so much easier over time as far as not getting burnt out and not wanting to be there and be on it, because you always are like, I know me, like I'm always struggling with that, like wanting to make calls, or I see something on social media that I have to send to them to like, did they see this update? I'm not at work right now. I don't know if everybody else saw it. But something that really helped me personally was, I have 2 cell phones. I have one that's for work and I have one that's a personal phone. And what I started doing, even when I was in Augusta, I would come home from work and I would sit that work phone down and away from it. It's still on. I can still hear it when it rings. Something crazy is going on, but I keep it away so that I can, still have a life. To me, it's something important to me that I want to make sure that I have a life, that I am a journalist and that's part of me, but that's not only who I am. And I think so many people who are in the industry really struggle because the only thing that they know they are is the journalist or is the news lady or whatever they do. And I want that to be part of who I am, but not every part of me,
Lex, so we have an occurring guest that comes to all of these podcasts, well, majority of these podcasts, and Ricardo, that's his name. He's in the chat right now. And he chats a lot. And I want to let Ricardo know the nitty gritty behind this. So when he said, wow, that's crazy, it's weird because when you see someone like on TV or working in TV, you always think they're making a lot of money. I want this podcast today, not just solely just, bash the news industry because you're still in it and whatever, but just I want to open their eyes to what we have to go through, and for the folks that want to be like you, what they have to, like people who are coming out of college trying to find a job, to give them some advice. So let's really open their eyes up. So essentially, let's go back to the cell phone thing. Yes, I had a cell phone, I had a work phone, and I had my regular phone. In Augusta, it was just my regular phone. And at Columbia, it was my work phone and my cell phone. People, when I moved here, I was working in the rural part of South Carolina. People did not respect that I was a person. They didn't, like, essentially we're a business too. Like if you're not going to call Target after 9 o'clock on a Sunday. So don't do that to me either. Like, we don't work every day. Like that I feel like that's another part of reason why people get burnt out as well. The pay, how much we have to do, and just the nonstop go that we have to go.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's really tough if it's not something you 100% want and that you love and that's a passion for you. Um, Specifically working in news, to really stay and grind it out, especially in those times when you've been working for 15, 16 hours in a row and it's like, crazy breaking news and you need to stay. Or even if it's not that crazy, you're just short staffed that week because it's the holiday and you're missing the holiday with your family, but you've got to work extra because there's only 3 of you and the news never stops.
Mm-hmm.
And that gets difficult when you're talking about people calling you and stuff when you're not at work. I mean, yeah, it happens all the time. And like I said, like my work phone, I keep it away, but I keep it on. I check it periodically because I know, if somebody needs me for something, then that's important. What I try to do though, as far as, when I am keeping it away, if I go to the pool on the weekend, if I go to the movies or on vacation or whatever, I make sure that, my bosses and my managers and they've got my personal number. And I'm really lucky in the fact that they do respect our time when we're not
Mm-hmm.
at work. And so if they call me on my personal number, then something, catastrophic is happening or something that they really need my help with. And most of the time when they've had to call me, it's something I can help them with over the phone. They need somebody's phone number
Mm-hmm.
for a source, or something didn't quite get communicated down the line the way it needed to. So they have a question about something that I left or something like that, is going to take only like 2 or 3 minutes out of my day versus, oh, I really need to like change clothes right now and get into the office type of thing.
I saw a recent post of you saying that if America says, hold my beer, I will be here. And I thought that was a good caption. And for the folks who don't know what I'm talking about, you were there when they had overturned the abortion law and stuff like that. Give me from the example from there, how's reporting from Augusta over to a big market city from Washington, D.C.?
Well, first, I've got to shout out your old colleague and coworker Jenna Kelly on that caption because she met me back when January 6th happened. Actually, I sent her a picture that I had, and she was, oh my gosh, like you need to post this, and I was like, but I don't know what to caption this, and she said that, and I've been kind of holding that one in my back pocket because I just thought it was, I mean, we are. The age that we are, and meme culture is real, and that was. I thought that was such a perfect, caption to have on something.
Good caption.
But yeah, that was all Jenna, coming up with that, over a year ago. As far as how different it is from Augusta, like obviously it's different. And I came up over here with huge imposter syndrome, right? Because I was 24 at the time, and I'm like, wow, like I'm getting this opportunity to report in a top 10 market, and it was it was scary and intimidating. And I even remember just going to the mayor's press conference here the first time that I was nervous to ask questions. And I did, and I pushed myself, but really I kind of studied how the other reporters were handling it and what they were doing, and really just learned a lot from the other reporters at the other stations out here in the field. And then I kind of realized after a little while, local news is local news wherever you are. Going to the mayor's press conference here is a lot like when I used to go there in Richmond County with Hardy Davis. And I needed to ask a question. I mean, it's the same, but on a bigger scale, right? Breaking news is breaking news. It operates the same. Hurry up and wait, figure out what's going on, talk to the police and figure it out and let them know back at the station. It's all of those like fundamental things that we learned in Augusta. They all transferred over here. And there's been certain, big breaking news scenes. I know how to operate during those because of the huge breaking news scenes that we had in Augusta. I mean, I remember the very first ever time that I had a crazy huge story. It was that plane crash in halfway between Augusta and Savannah. The name of the town just escaped me, but there was that one lone survivor from that plane crash out there, and that was on a
Oh
Saturday.
yeah.
And I was the only one working at the station that day, and I was at some like breast cancer awareness benefit thing. And I was about to go back to the station and finish editing. And Angela, my news director at the time, called me. She was in Atlanta at the Beyonce concert, and she stepped out and called me and sit me there. She's like, it's going to take you about an hour and 15 to get there. Go ahead and get on the road. And she called me 3 or 4 times throughout that evening. She is in Atlanta watching Beyonce. And she's taken the time to call me and tell me, make sure that you go on Facebook Live when you get there. Make sure that you connect with so-and-so from whatever police and fire department when you get there. Find out this information, and then you're going to go live here, and then you're going to need to find Wi-Fi and make sure you put your thing together. I mean, having mentors like that and people who really cared, but also, on their off time did what they expected you to do and really helped you out. That's the only reason that I know how to operate when I'm in a situation like that with huge breaking news. It's the only reason that I knew, like when January 6th was going on, that I wasn't freaking out while I'm at the Capitol, because I know what to do and keep my head on a swivel and keep myself safe, but also keep myself level-headed and knowing what's going on and able to like report that back to people while not catching yourself really in awe, like you've never been at breaking news before.
Well, because you were newer at the time, like you were maybe a few months in when January 6th happened. Coming from Augusta, the people know who you are. Oh, Lex, I see you all the time. I watch you all the time. Ball Street 4 is my favorite station. Devin, I know you. I see you all the time. You know what I'm saying? Like we get that when we go. Devin had
the fans.
I did have the fans. I missed the news. I just hated the station I was at. That's the only reason why I quit. I love being a journalist. I just hated that station. I had to get out of my contract. But the people know you. Even if there's a breaking news situation, the people are not really like dramatic. Is it like that over where you're at? Because like you've been in 2 scary situations where they're talking about now they're talking about we're not their friends anymore. They don't rely on us anymore. They're trying to really freaking hurt us, but we're trying to do our job. They're talking about actually killing us. Has it been crazy that over there now? Or how have you managed that?
It's interesting too, and speaking of the difference between that small market and being here in such a big city, and at a station too, that we just completely rebranded our station. And I was the first reporter here for my station in DC. And they've just recently in the past few months moved over here. We just launched our show here, built a brand new studio. And I finally have help, and like a photographer that's with me every day. I was doing it solo here in the city for, a year and a half, running around like a chicken with my head cut off, trying to keep up with the other stations.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so people don't recognize me the way that they did in Augusta.
Yeah.
Where, they'd come up and, oh, we know Fox 54, and because they see my shirt, that they're like, cool. So I have to like kind of, explain to people who I am when they ask. And when I'm at a huge national news story, they don't know who anybody is, right? And we were already talking about January 6th. So I can use that as an example. I was out there all week, the whole week leading up to that. They were holding rallies and stuff. For the most part, the fact that my station is not affiliated with any network. We're affiliated with News Nation. We're not affiliated with, Fox.
Oh, okay.
That really helped me in that instance, because people were like, oh, you're the truth, and I would think to myself, and I would tell them after I interviewed them, just for the record, no matter who I'm with, I would be asking you the same exact questions and telling this story the exact same. But I appreciate you talking to me. But it was even funny because, I had this man I interviewed who was here. I'll never forget him, Henry from St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
And he got really excited when he saw me because he thought I was somebody who I'm not. And he ran across the street, but he was, dressed in his, all red, Make America Great Again hoodie. And he gave me a great interview the day before on January 5th. And at the end of it, we always ask, is there anything else you would like to add? And he goes, yes. I just want to say to your managers and to the people above you, y'all have a gift right here. Don't lose her. And I remember I just started laughing. I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish everybody who I asked, do you have anything else to add, said this. And I got back to the station. I'm sending a little clip of it to my friends. They're like, well, gosh, Lex, like, what'd you say to him? And I was like, I literally just was normal. I was just talking to him normal. And he, I guess, really was liking our conversation. And I think that, it kind of speaks to just being, authentic in yourself and nice to people as you're talking to them, that people respond to, people treating each other like they're humans. And, that's something that really helps. It's, if I go up to a scene of something I know is highly emotional, somebody's going to be very upset or, they're going through one of the worst days of their life, one of the worst moments they've ever had. I keep that in mind. Sometimes I pray on the way to a station, or on the way to a story. And I just pray, like, Lord, please give me the words to say. Please give me the approach that's not, super aggressive in this moment, and help them to see, where I'm coming from as a journalist, and that I'm not here out to get somebody or out to make somebody's day worse. I really want to, help them tell their loved one's story and honor their loved one and that kind of thing. And when I get there, if they don't want me there, or they, are immediately, upset, I don't hold that against them either, because you gotta, in those moments, I always think to myself, people gotta be mad at somebody. You have to have somebody to blame, and a lot of the times the media, especially
you don't want to be to blame.
That's us.
We're gonna take the blame. At least you have, like, I guess, like you said, because you guys are not Fox and you're not CBS, you're ABC, you kind of have like that almost sort of senses that past, because I was with CBS. And we had a meeting when every time they had rallies, because if they can riot on Capitol Hill, on the Capitol at the State House, they're gonna do it. And we had a meeting. They was like, "Hey man, they talking about tearing up our equipment, hurting us, potentially like killing us and stuff like that." So it was like, don't go. He's like, I know you've seen all these different like reporters on their live shots and they're going inside the crowd, but we're not going to do that. We're going to be across the street, away from people. We're not even going to wear our polos. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're just going to be Joe Blow with the camera, take the mic flags. It was like every situation like that was just like amped up.
I don't know what company you were with.
Next Tegna.
Okay, and I'm with Nextstar now, and they did the same with us. We didn't have, I did have my mic flag on January 6th, but we ended up taking.
You're trying to die.
So we don't have our mic flags on in those, like, more tumultuous moments. And all of our cars are unmarked now. And I haven't worn a station polo to something like that. And they also hire bodyguards, right? I didn't have a bodyguard on January 6th because it kind of happened so, like,
trust me, I know I did a nice story and whatnot, and I was kind of late to turn it in, which I'm never late to turn stories in, but it was a little slow for me that day for some reason.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, did y'all get my package? Fuck that package. I was like, fuck that package. You don't see what's happening on TV? I clicked on the TV. I was like, whoa. Yeah. Okay, I guess fuck my package.
But you had been so into what you were doing,
right?
Time to be looking at your phone and at what's
going on. Crazy time.
Yeah, and also on January 6th, they told us, I was on the way there and I didn't even drive. I had a coworker actually drop me off, and I just walked with they sent another reporter out there to be my photog that day, so I wasn't by myself. And we walked, and we just did off the shoulder, and I had my mic. in case we needed to run. But I was not allowed to go, like, really, I wasn't supposed to be on the Capitol grounds at all. But if I was the story, I had to be on there a little bit. The Capitol is up a hill, and there's next to the sidewalk. If I wouldn't have gotten at least up off the sidewalk, I wouldn't have been able to see anything. However, like I said, a lot of situations it's all about situational awareness, making sure I know what, where I'm being around, and being, vigilant for myself. And it's like that, anywhere, especially, especially when it's a situation like that. So, I mean, I never once felt unsafe. Nobody really attacked me. You get people staring at you, and I have had, somebody tried to interrupt one of my live shots with the fake news and all that. And that person actually ended up, after I got off the air, I kind of looked at him and I said, I just want to know what I said that's incorrect. And he looked at me and he said, oh, well, you said it was this side and it was this side, this. Well, what about the other side? And I remember I looked at him and I was really confused. And I'm trying to think back to what my live shot was talking about. And I said, I looked at him and I was like, look, I know that you think the media is out to get you. I said, but I'm not out to get you. I'm out here just telling people what's going on. I've been covering this story for 3 days. I've been following this crowd and their protests and rallies and what they're looking for. I said, and I've been out here all day, all afternoon. I said, going live with my anchors, and you can't hear them right now because you're not watching the TV. I said, but I've got this earpiece in. I pulled my hair back and showed him my IFB, and I said, and
no, you had it that day.
Yeah, and I said, I was like, my anchor asked me if, from what I could tell, there was people on the other side of the Capitol, or if they were only on this side. And his face completely shifted, and he apologized to me, and he was like, I'm so sorry, I didn't know that. And then he starts, talking about the things he's upset about again. And I said, look, if you want to make sure I get this story right, if you want to make sure I get the facts right, why don't you talk to me? Why don't you let me interview you and tell me, what the facts are?
That's why I love you. Me and you have the same mindset. I love checking people. And if you got an attitude, get in front of the camera and talk to me. If you don't want to talk, then shut up. I love checking people.
He gave me the best interview I got all day long. And it was, real and raw. And obviously his emotions were heightened as everybody's who had been at that rally at the Ellipse, and he was at the Capitol that day. And I mean, if you can I obviously was having to have some patience and really explain to him, but if you can have some patience with people and you can kind of try to understand where they're coming from and that empathy, that's going to take you a long way. I think that's why it's so important to me that I'm not very opinionated about things, and I do that on purpose, right? Because I'm trying not to put myself in a corner when I'm trying to tell a story that, especially something like that's, getting people so emotional and hyped up. I mean, I remember people were, texting, calling me, are you okay? Are you okay? Knowing I'm there. And I didn't answer any of them until that night because I'm working. And then people are trying to talk to me about it, over the next few weeks, as everybody was talking about it, and I kept telling them, I haven't really stopped to process it yet because I'm still telling the story. So I'm not going to process it and form an opinion on it until I'm done telling the story, because otherwise, I think that's when we step out of the realm of doing our job and letting people know what's going on and start trying to tell them what they should think about something rather than just sticking to what the facts were and letting them decide for themselves.
Has that made you, now with all that, that January 6th and then the latest one, Roe versus Wade, has that, you probably have some other stories that come in and tied in. I think those are probably what, I'm not speaking for you. Are those your biggest stories so far?
The two biggest, I mean, as far as national stories.
Okay. Two biggest national.
With COVID, but those are huge. I mean, that's in the history books.
Yeah.
All Americans, forever. Not just with that crazy local news, which, as you know, happens everywhere.
Has that changed your style of reporting?
think so.
Or
I
has
think
that made you a better reporter? Like, had those stories, like, because like what I'm saying is like, has those stories like changed the way you start reporting stories or going about a story, or maybe changed yourself as a reporter?
it's definitely developed me as a better and made me a better reporter. You
Mm,
know, to be able to stay on the scene of something. I mean, I've seen it in other people, and other journalists out in the field who are, you can tell they're emotional. They're not able to separate themselves from it, right? Because at the end of the day, you have to recognize that we are all human beings who have opinions and feelings and thoughts. Um, and if you know you're not prepared for that, if you know you have super strong feelings about something, you kind of have to take a step back and maybe even have that conversation with your boss and say, look, I was born and raised this way, you know, and it could be about anything. I mean, there was a recent story that was, you know, big news around here that they were trying to get me to do, and it was regarding something that was happening in the school system and with special needs kids. And you know, I read the facts of the story and what had been coming out already, what we knew, and I said, look, I think somebody else needs to do this because I have an opinion and it's strong, and I don't need to share it because I don't need to, you know, sway somebody else's
hmm
you know, thinking if they're able to keep this separate. But I told them, I was like, I don't need to do this story. And they said, you know, okay, you know, they respect, I think people respect the fact that you're able to know yourself enough to say, this is one that I just shouldn't do because I'm not gonna be fair to one side or the other.
Well, I know you had 8 live shots today. Well, this makes the 8 live shots. So you've had 7 live shots. I'm gonna ask you a few questions before we wrap up. Um, the first question I want to ask you is, where do you see yourself being at? Local news, national news? Um, like, what's your goal for the next years to go? Do you still want to be in the industry? Do you want to, like, what do you want to do? I've never asked you that question even before this.
Yeah, and you know, I think especially when we're first starting out, it's everybody just kind of assumes everyone wants the same thing, you know?
National news.
And I've kind of there it's the same way that I even got into journalism to begin with, right? I didn't know what I wanted to do. I have so many different interests, and I was, you know, trying to figure out what I could do to best serve the community. I knew I wanted to help people, right?
Mm,
Everything else was kind of like, well, I could help people by doing so many different things, right?
mm-hmm.
And then I kind of stumbled into journalism in college, and I ended up being pretty good at it. And that's really how I ended up, you know, here, and then really, you know, finding that love for serving the community in this way. I am still figuring out exactly what like my interim kind of goal is. I just re-signed my contract here, which wasn't supposed to be up until September, but thank you. Yeah. So I re-signed with them for 2 more years in
Damn.
in February. So I'm here for at least 2 more years. Um, and you know, I really love what my station right now is doing and trying to do in the community, and this like breaking in to the DC market and giving people not only the DC news, but everything around the market, and really serving that local community, right? Because it's real easy when you're in the nation's capital to go, you know, a lot of that national news and what's going on immediately in DC, right? But there are so many people that live around here that they need to be served too and feel like their voices are being heard and people care about them. And that's kind of my station's mission right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got bureaus all around just to make sure that we've got people in place to do that. And I love that. I love breaking news. I would
Mm-hmm.
absolutely love to be picked up by a network of some sort and be able to go out and, you know, go to those huge scenes, go to the hurricanes, go to the things that are going on, you know, around the country and around the world that people need to know. I would love to do that also. Um, and that I love Austin, Texas, and I would love to go back to Austin and work there. I mean, there's so many things that I think would be so awesome. And so I kind of just am not having my eyes completely set on one thing, but just continuing to improve every day and become, better at what I do. You said I had 7 live shots today. I want to have 7 perfect live shots that I love all of them, and whichever one you want for the web, because I don't care. That kind of thing, like, just honing my craft really. And making sure that I'm making a huge impact. I've been nominated for some awards. I've never won one. That's something that is definitely on the bucket list, I guess, if you're looking at like your career wise. But I don't necessarily want to even like grade myself, for lack of better word right now, on that either. I just want to do my best and really make an impact where I'm at. And so, whatever that looks like in whatever role or capacity, like that's kind of what I want to do.
Where, like, I want to say is you've always been like that type of reporter that's been very helpful. I wouldn't say I wouldn't say you've ever taught me anything, but if I couldn't find a reporter, what?
I said, oh, you wouldn't.
You've got onto me about things. You have got onto me about things. I do appreciate you smacking me around. You do keep me straight. But I would say that you have you're that type of reporter that likes to put your hands on the people and help them out and to make sure they blossom. Do you see yourself for the people? What I'm trying to say for the reporters that are coming in, the newer reporters, because I've got this reporter that I'm talking to weekly that she just started in Albany. Is there any advice that you want to give newer reporters that you may have learned that you wish somebody would have told you?
Yeah, definitely. And actually, even bringing that up, that's something else I would love to do is go into news management. Whenever I feel like my time on air is done, I would absolutely love to be mentoring folks in that way. And I'm not sure exactly even where in management I'd like to be. If it just looks at like an EP role or like being a news director, I would love to be, that person that like Angela was for me, and then my next news director David was for me, and just really being somebody that people can turn to, and then that they can say, Lex really helped me learn how to do this. I think that's awesome. My advice, to people just starting out, I think is, number one, give yourself grace. Don't beat yourself up when a live shot is bad, or when you have a black frame in your package, or even when you miss a spot, or you can't get an interview that somebody else in your market got.
Done all that.
Yeah, like it happens to literally everyone. You have to give
when the microphone's not on.
Right. I mean, when you've done something and you get back to the station and you accidentally hit the record button 2 times, your whole interview's not there because you weren't recording the whole time. I mean, things like that happen, and you have to just make sure that you learn from them and you don't repeat your mistakes over and over again. I think that giving yourself grace is the biggest thing. Nobody's perfect. All of us have been there and made those stupid mistakes that we kick ourselves for. Totally kick yourself. Make yourself be better. Give yourself a hard time. But, give yourself a hard time for like 5 minutes and then say, I'll do better next time. I think that's number one. Number two, prepare yourself for the fact that it's not as glamorous as it looks, and be positive in knowing and trusting that process that it's gonna get better. You're not always gonna be struggling. You're not always gonna be, turning your heat off in the winter because you can't afford it at Georgia Power. And
throw a little shade in there.
I mean, because when you're too prideful like myself and you don't want to ask your parents for help, and you just wait until it gets to be about 40 degrees in your apartment before you turn it back on. And yes, it gets that cold in Georgia. I was shocked.
Yeah.
But I think that staying positive, remembering why you got into it in those moments when it's hard, because it will be hard, and really giving it your all, but making time for yourself too, because that self-care is so crucial in not being burnt out. And that's why we lose good journalists, right? Because they're getting burnt out, because nobody, we learn how to do the job, right? And then
everything.
It was so different back in the day, to lack of resources, how much time you had, that kind of thing. And so the people who are older in it, they're just like, oh no, you just got to put all this time in. And you absolutely, practice makes perfect. The more time you put in, the better you're going to be, the faster you're going to be better.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to make time for yourself. You have to give yourself that self-love, and that grace, and really let yourself have a work-life balance. Because if you don't, you're going to get burnt out. You're going to go into work and you're going to hate going in there. Figure out what works for you and what gets you that positive mindset. Because otherwise you're going to be miserable. And if you're miserable going to work, you're only going to be more miserable when you're there.
Oh yeah.
And a third thing I think people need to think about too, as a reporter just starting out, don't get your mindset on what you want to do that day, what your story is, because things change. And if you are so into and wanting to do your story, and I'm not saying don't get into it, because we need to be excited and into what we're telling. You need to have the mindset that this is the most interesting thing anybody's going to hear all day, right?
Mm.
But go into that knowing this could change. I could have to cancel on an interview because we have breaking news. I could be editing a story and it's almost finished, and we have breaking news and I gotta go. And that story's dead and it's never gonna air. And you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with pivoting, because that's the market. That's the job that we chose. And I remember having to have a come to Jesus meeting with myself, because I was on the way to a shooting and I was mad that I was not able to put my story up. And I told I had to tell myself, Lex, this is what you asked for. This is the job that you signed up to do. And once I got over that and I was okay with pivoting, it was a lot easier for me, because I wasn't so stressed about A, having to cancel, or B, you tell people, I'm so sorry, we had breaking news. People understand, because they know that that's what the news is.
Mm-hmm. And you could just always repurpose it.
Right. For later.
Yeah.
Save it for later and try to pitch it later, but don't make that your whole life for that day, because they're more likely than not you're going to get pivoted. I mean, I was covering the Washington Commanders training camp this morning, the fact that it was starting today. And I left from that story and I went and did an interview about some people who are planning to shut down the congressional baseball game tomorrow and disrupt that. Two completely different stories. I had a coworker who was supposed to be going live at the circus this morning. That's a great morning show story. She had to cancel on the circus. It is about maybe the second time she's had to do that, because a girl got kidnapped. Her boyfriend put her in the back of a car and kidnapped her. And breaking news, she had to go and do that. And so it happens, and just being able to be okay with the fact that oh, it's kind of a bummer that I didn't get to do this really cool story that I set up, but knowing that at the end of the day, it's just part of the job.
I think those are 3 good things that new journalists should remember. I would say I would add a 4th thing. If being on the anchor desk is your main goal and that's your driving factor, take that off. Worried about becoming a better journalist, better writer, better filmer, better editor, better digital journalist, all that before you even think about getting on that anchor desk. I think a lot of new journalists, that's their first thing that they want to do. Then they get in the business and they see oh shit, we got to do all this. And then they get burnt out and either they stay or they leave. So that's my little side note. But you said something that I did like that I want to pivot to for my last question, which is you talked about your coworker had to cancel her story at a live shot at the circus because a girl was kidnapped by her boyfriend and put in the trunk.
Yes.
Is there a story that you remember, any story that you remember that you you'll never forget? That you go to the bar and you just tell the story all the time Maybe going on a date and you be like, yeah, I'm a news reporter. I remember this one time, like, yeah, this happened. Because I have those stories.
I mean, I think that we all have a bunch of stories like that. It's always hard when you get put on the spot and people are like, what's your favorite story you've ever done? And the first things that pop in your mind, are
the shootings,
some of the most tragic things that you've ever seen. And I think that's because, like you said, they stick with you. And I'm trying to think right now what are stories that I'll never forget. I mean, one of my first 2 weeks here in DC, or my first month, I was covering something that ended up being such a crazy night, and I was so really proud of the way that I was able to tell the story and get that on air despite circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
They were protesting at one of the police headquarters here. The local people against the DC Police Department because a man had died after being chased by the police. And there's actually a law here in DC. They're not supposed to chase people. And there's only like certain circumstances when they're allowed to chase you, one of which being like if they see you actively committing a felony, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are certain like laws like that, and it's because chasing people is dangerous, especially in these city streets. Anybody can get hurt. And the police have been chasing this guy on a moped, and he ended up getting in a car accident on the moped and getting thrown from it, and he died. And the community members had been protesting at this police headquarters for night after night after night. And this is in the end of 2020. This is months after George Floyd died at the hands of police, and all of the riots and the BLM protests and all of that. So this is coming on the heels of that. So people are already fired up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the police were taking a while to release their dash cam footage. And the word that was going around the community was that he got in that accident because the police rear-ended him on this moped. And that was the narrative going around. Now, you end up seeing, once they released the dash cam footage, that he actually, came out of an alleyway. They were chasing him in and hit a car. And that led to him, being ejected from the moped. And so the police didn't actually hit him. But at that time, that's what people, thought had happened.
Yeah.
And I'm covering this, and I, follow them from where they were first at, where they held a candlelit vigil for him, all the way to the police headquarters. And I'm filming all of this. And they sent somebody with me, a photographer who he really didn't, you know me, I never worked with a photographer. So I kind of like took the camera from him, but he like ran back and got the car, and he brought it back up to where the police headquarters was, which was like a mile away. And there was a McDonald's around the corner. And so after I got, the police coming out in their riot gear and people throwing things at them and getting, everybody close to the face, and sound from the guy who died's mother, and just like, everything that I needed, all the elements to tell this story and to tell people what was going on. I went to the car in the McDonald's parking lot to use, obviously the McDonald's Wi-Fi, and I'm editing my story. And I'm finished with my story, and I'm about to export it. And all of a sudden, I kind of looked to the right, and I had sent the photographer back out because somebody started shooting fireworks off in the street. And I was like, go get video of this, right? And the window was cracked just a little. And he wasn't there, and he took the keys with him. And all of a sudden, like, I hear, noise, and the police had forced and pushed the protesters into this McDonald's parking lot, right?
Oh shit.
The car is in the parking space. The protesters are on this side of me in the parking lot, like behind the car. And the police are on this side of me. And the police are spraying their tear gas at them. It's like coming through the crack of the car. I'm like coughing, like I can't roll the window up because I don't have the keys. And the protesters start throwing fireworks at the police, right? So my car is like shaking, like as these fireworks are going off. And I'm thinking to myself, like, oh God, like I have no idea where this photographer is. I sent, I don't know if he's okay, but I was like stuck in the car, I couldn't move.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden the police come up, knock on my window, and they're like, you gotta move, like you need to get out of here. And I'm like, I can't go anywhere, right? And all of a sudden the photographer comes up, hands in the air, he's scared to death, and he is like, I'm just trying to get in the car, like I have the keys. And they let him in and they let us back up and leave, and we were fine. I got the story in, and then we moved a few blocks away where we were allowed to go, and I went live, and the story, aired, and everything was great. On that front, like it's smooth by being great. But I got home and I was just like, wow, like, I covered the BLM protests in Augusta that whole summer, and I never
they were never like that,
right?
Nothing like that.
And this was just like a local protest, against the DC Police Department, and I was like, holy crap, like, and I remember in the moment it was just like a lot of adrenaline, right? And I think most of our job is, and that's part of why we don't really process things the same as other people, because we're always put in those adrenaline pumping situations. But that's something that totally stuck with me, because I was like looking up videos. People were like live streaming, and I'm like, there's my car, like right there. Like, I was in there, I was right there. Like,
yeah,
it was so wild. And for that to be like in my first month here, I was like so proud of getting that story done, getting it in on time, and being able to find a live shot and get out of that situation, and being safe through it all. But really feeling like I had done my due diligence on that story. And so, as far as the answer to your question, I guess that's the one I'm going to stick with.
I'll take that one.
I can't think of, I don't know that I really have a go-to, because we end up getting these stories and you almost forget about some of the crazy things that you cover until you're really like trying to dive in and think like, what is the craziest thing I've seen? Like, I've seen people pour their families who died of COVID's ashes out on the steps of the Senate building because they wanted senators to do something. I mean, just like, and I remember when this is happening, I was like up in there with my camera, like, oh my gosh, like, and then like afterwards, I was like, I probably need to go take a shower. Like the wind was blowing that day,
Yeah.
I was the only local media there. So like I got the exclusive on that. And it was just, and then thinking to myself, like what these people are feeling, like, those are the only thing they have left of their family member, and they're using it in this way because they want to enact change. I mean, that was like
crazy.
Like, you want to do something powerful, there it is. Like that's powerful, and so wild. And I mean, just things like that we cover, and it's almost like it doesn't really affect us because we don't even realize how wild what we're seeing is, because we're
just trying to get the story.
Yeah, and we've seen so much.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for spending the past 52 minutes with me. I've missed you. I know we could do this for hours, but they don't want to hear us talk for hours and hours and hours. But I do need to come visit you. I have to come to DC and come visit you. I will come do that soon.
I would love to help you find some content to create for your platform. And yeah, I mean, you're right. 52 minutes, that's enough for me. I'm not that interested. Right?
No, you're interested. We've hung out like in the bars. We spent hours together.
Never St. Patrick's Day. That was the best.
Let's leave that. Hey, you know what? Let's tell that story on another
time. Totally. Yeah.
Not on this, but on my YouTube channel. We'll figure out a segment how to do that. That's a wild time, yo. That was a wild time.
That was so fun. And I was like, please just take this day trip with me. I don't want to go by myself.
Yeah,
you always were there for me. And then even trying to like me and Devin worked the graveyard shift. Everybody. Like,
God, I liked it.
I work the mornings now, and I like it so much better as far as life here. And like when we were in Augusta, we all worked the same shift, and we were our only friends. So that was whatever, we're on the same shift. But I mean, Devin would wake up early just to meet me for lunch, y'all, just because.
I would do that. I'd love my sleep. So you're lucky. I will go to work at 2:30, and I would wake up earlier for you, 2:30 p.m. And I would sleep in until like 12, get lunch at 1, and then maybe sit around the house a little bit. But I would expedite that all for you to get lunch sometimes.
Yeah, and then we would, sit there and at least we would go to work prepared that day. What's
Oh,
yeah? What are we covering?
Yeah, I already had the story. We already had our stories, and we weren't like, oh, like I got this. Go find your own stories. Like, hey, I'm doing this. Maybe you should look at it too.
Yeah, especially. Yeah. I mean, I don't think if it's the same. Everybody's working on the same stories there.
Yeah. Yeah. I do want to shout out Retro Motion real quick. Retro Motion. Got to shout out Retro Motion because without them, this couldn't be done. Love this platform. I love the fact that creators can come together and talk to each other about whatever. So I love this. I'll definitely be back next week with something. And I got to have you on again. We got to do this again. We got to do a part 2. I do want to do that Savannah story though.
Oh my goodness. Well, we'll have to discuss off the air and figure out.
Well, yeah, we'll figure that out. Not on the air. And Ricardo, thank you so much for asking some wonderful questions. Do have one more question for you, Lex.
Okay.
This is have you ever heard this question been asked to you? You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else you want to add that I'm failing to ask you?
Oh, I feel like I should totally go like all Henry from St. Louis on this one. All I want to add, is just thanks for having me on here today. I had so much fun talking to you and catching up, and I am so proud of you for, branching off and doing your own thing. A lot of times when people announce that they're leaving the news industry, I feel like they're worried they're going to get a lot of hate and a lot of, like, oh, they gave up or they're a quitter or whatever. And as soon as when you announced that, when you left and you announced that you were doing this content, I've just loved watching you grow and blossom into your own thing and what you want to do as a content creator. And I think it is so awesome. I mean, I show you to my friends and I'm like, look at it. Like, this is Devin. I mean, he's not Devin anymore because he's got his whole new persona. Like, and I love that. I love seeing people really do what makes them happy. And I can tell that you are so happy in what you're doing. And I'm grateful that you even, that you have this platform too, that has picked you up and that believes in you, and I believe in you, and I'm just so excited for whatever's to come for you.
I'm touched. Thanks. I'm excited for you as well. I'm excited for your journey. You're in a top 10 market. You're kicking ass. Like I said, I actually was talking about you last Wednesday to a content creator. She same everything about you. You guys could be freaking clones. And then she was saying that, she's the type of person where she smacks her friends around when they're doing bad, not against her, but against yourself. And I was like, oh yeah, that's Lex. She slapped me a couple of times for not being mean to her, for being mean to myself. So yeah, I'm excited for your journey, and I'm going to continue supporting you, and I love you.
Yes, I love you too. Mwah.